G'day and welcome back to Kenty Blitz, your daily hit of NRL news. Kenty back on a Monday. Good weekend of footy.
Great weekend of footy. Yeah, what's funny, isn't it? Because we all sit here and worry about what's going on with this time of year, the quality of the games. But I thought there's some really terrific efforts out there over the weekend, so it's nice to see.
Yeah, looking forward to going through the weekend wrap. Let's start off with a few games. Warriors-Penrith. Penrith's win obviously reveals the folly of this whole draw argument.
Well, that's it, isn't it, Warren? Like everyone talks about how Origin comes in and wrecks the competition rounds, and we need to have a break and all this sort of rubbish. And honestly, I've never been a fan of suspending the competition for Origin. This has been an argument. This argument's it's old enough to shave now. Okay, and the fact is, every time the people who keep pushing the argument that we need to suspend the competition use the argument that, well, quality of games and teams are unfairly handicapped because they're without their Origin players, Penrith go out and just put the whole argument to bed. They went to New Zealand, very difficult road trip. The Warriors are flying this season. They're sitting third on the ladder before the weekend. Well, they still are, but they're sitting third on the ladder before this game. The Warriors Penrith are trying to fight their way into the 8, and yet Penrith, without any of their Origin stars, answered the call, and they were magnificent. Won the game and never looked. It wasn't a lucky win. They never looked like losing. They were in control from the start. It was such an impressive effort. One of the things I think surprised us at the beginning of the season about the Panthers was when they were losing those games, they were losing them in a way that we hadn't seen Penrith lose in many years. Their defence was all over the shop. They had so much turnover of players, and Ivan Cleary is bringing in so many debutants to the club and so many guys who'd only had limited games at the club, and they were really struggling to understand the Penrith defensive system, and they were struggling to adapt to that. But then what's happened is over time, and it's a really good effort. We said, I don't know, probably 5-6 weeks ago, it's going to take some real coaching now from Ivan and get them out of this. Well, that's what we're seeing. They're right back in the fight now. Their defence is got that energy and that effort that we saw through the 4 years of their premierships. Just the way they are working. It's a defensive system that the Warriors are using, very similar, and it's a defensive system that the Bulldogs are using. All basically, Andrew Webster, Kevin Serrato were obviously assistants under Ivan at Penrith. Penrith, ironically, this year were the club that fell out of shape in that area, but they're back now. And I think for Penrith fans, there's a real lot of hope there now.
Kenny, it's interesting you talk about that because there's a couple of ways that teams approach losing players or approach trying to win games. Like Penrith have gone youth, Canberra have gone youth, Roosters have gone youth. And then other teams, bring in older players. St George, I can't think of any off the top of my head. West Tigers. It's an interesting, I guess, way to look at it, and it brings out the best in the coaching, doesn't it? Yeah,
well, what it does, the whole philosophy there is if you win a premiership, you're not going to essentially maintain that squad for much longer. Once players come off contract, and they're premiership winning players, they are looking for upgrades in their contract. Now, because of the salary cap, you have to prioritise what players get a pay rise and what players you've just got to say, sorry, mate, we can't accommodate you. And Penrith, because what they've done, what Canterbury are now doing, what Canberra have invested in, for different reasons, to be fair with Canberra, but what they've done is they've realised that, look, if we start having success, we're going to lose these players. So what they do is they put the pathways coming through, they get them in tip-top shape. They go out and they spend money on their junior teams, their junior rep teams, and they get good players in, and they get them quality first-grade style coaching, I would say. They don't go out and look for that coach who's going to win a comp with them but not teach them the kind of footy they're going to need to play in first grade. They want a guy, and Penrith, I know for a fact, have actually, they're quite comfortable with not winning premierships in the lower grades, provided the players are getting educated, so by the time they play first grade, they are capable of winning at first grade level. So that if that means that we've got to play a system, or they don't quite have the sides or whatever in the lower ranks to win the comp that year, they're capable. They're happy to cope with that. Unfortunately, at some of the other clubs, the ambitions of the junior coaches take precedence.
Yeah, okay.
There's not enough, I would say, dialogue from the top down about what they want and what they require. They'll all admit that they do it, but they don't. And then what happens is a guy will go out and selfishly a coach will play a player in the wrong position, for instance, a position he'll never play first grade in. Okay, but he'll put him there because for the under 17s or the under 18s, that's the best. That's the best for him to win the comp. But that's not going to help that kid play first grade eventually.
Well, it's interesting because at many clubs, those kind of SG Ball and below, Harold Matts are part-time coaches. You know, they're not all full-time.
Yeah, but they've got the ambition to be full-time.
Yeah, but so I guess what I'm trying to say is part of their ambition is to be a full-time coach, and to do that, they concentrate on winning.
They want to win, yeah. And
exactly.
That's an issue I've got with a lot of junior coaches, and it's an issue I think that's rife in the game. But again, see, some coaches I know, head NRL coaches, don't pay much attention to their juniors. They don't believe that. They trust their ability to go into the market. And
Still these days.
Yeah, they still do it. And and that's just a different philosophy. It's just a different attitude to how they do it. I think for some coaches, it all comes down to how safe they feel in their jobs. Because you look at, to give you a really good example, you look at what's happening at West Tigers now with Da Silva. Okay, now he's a young kid. He's a very good hooker. He's tipped to be a long-time first grader. Now, at the same time, the Tigers have got Api Coruscant there now. So there's this talk that's been going around that Da Silva won't stay at the club because the Tigers can't make their mind up about whether they want. They don't want to move Coruscant on. But by the time if he extends his contract, which it looks now like he will do. That then says to Da Silva, well, mate, you've probably got another 2 or 3 years sitting in lower grades. Now, at some point, his talent's going to be enough that another NRL club is going to want him. So if he's going to be a very good player for 10 years, this is the choice that Benji's got to make. If he's going to be a very good player for 10 years, even longer, does he say, well, okay, look, mate, it's probably a year or two earlier than I would like, but if it means keeping him, do we move Coruscant on? That's his choice. Or does he say, no, I want to win now. I want to try. I'll risk losing a 10-year player at this club because I need to win in the next couple of years.
Well, Benji probably looks at it and thinks, well, I might not be here in a couple of years.
That's the crux of it.
Yeah.
The crux of it, because he will. There's every chance, and it's a reasonable thought. Because if Benji doesn't have success in the next 2 seasons, he's probably going to get out the door. So he needs to win in those 2 seasons, and that's why some clubs don't invest too heavily in their juniors because they haven't got the patience. Well, the coach hasn't got the patience to do that. That's big picture. You want to talk philosophically about the game. That's why clubs, the good, strong clubs, have really good recruitment general manager style people. Because what the job is, in its purest terms, the job of the general manager, Phil Gould, for example, Frank Panisi, those sorts of players, is to overlook the immediate interests of the coach and look after the long-term welfare of the club. So they have to sit there and say, okay, well, the coach is coaching this squad now, but what do we look like in 3 years? Who's still here? Who's coming to the end of their deal, or getting close? Not many years left, all that. And he has to look at that. The coach is trying to win today. Coaches will make decisions to win today because provided they win today, they're in a job. But the general manager, sometimes they'll do that, though, the coaches at the sacrifice of the long-term goal.
Yep.
So the general manager's job is to look beyond the short-term requirements of the coach at the long-term success of the club. And sometimes they'll butt heads. Now, the good operators work in sync, like Bellamy and Panisi. Like Gould has an ability to sit there. Now, he probably runs a little bit roughshod over some of the coaches he's had. He's clearly had some fallouts with coaches in the past, but he's got the power to do that. He's got the power to sit there and look after the long-term recruitment of the club. Now, that's an important thing to do. The clubs that don't have that are generally all coaching short-term to try and get that success. And it's a dangerous – you're playing with fire a little bit that way.
I think it's extraordinary that in the modern age, all clubs don't have that position. I mean, I can't believe some clubs don't have that position. So, you look at Melbourne, Tyrone Wishart, they've got Faialunga, who I think is the next big superstar in the game, and they're keeping those players who could go and start elsewhere. Yeah. And yet other clubs – without those, I guess, recruitment agents struggle, right?
The concern for Benji on the Tigers fans is Benji was asked over the weekend, will Talon Da Silva be still at the club by June 30? And he said, not sure. Now, that sets off a couple of alarm bells for certainly Tigers fans who are looking at the long-term future of their club. And the thing that disappoints me, this hasn't come up yet, but the one thing that has not been mentioned yet, which the Tigers should know better than anybody, is why not say to Talon Da Silva, look, mate, we've got Api Coruscant here. He's currently still playing top-rate football. We dead set think you're a part of the club long-term. If you want to play first grade, he's only 19. If you think you can play first grade next year, loan him out. Let's remember, when Cameron Smith kept extending his contract, what happened? They had a young kid called Harry Grant coming through at Melbourne, and they said, and Harry Grant started to get impatient. He was ready to play first grade 2 years before he was regularly playing first grade. So what did Melbourne do? They allowed him to go to Tigers for a year to play first grade on the condition that we came back to Melbourne. Tigers can do the same now with Da Silva. They should be sitting there with the conversation and say, mate, we will loan you out. And you go away, and then when Coruscant retires or 1 or 2 seasons, whatever it is, you come back to the club. Now, Api might want to play too long, but certainly the discussion hasn't even been brought up in Tigerland. Second to that, the big concern for the Tigers would be that he's managed by Isaac Moses, who just took Lockie Galvin out of the club. But it's certainly, you've got to have somebody there who's got the street smarts to be able to wheel and deal, to be, okay, what do you want out of this? What do you want out of this? Okay, let's try and find a solution where we both get what we want. And that way, Api Coruscant gets what he wants. Talon Da Silva gets what he wants.
But that's Richo. I mean, surely he should have the...
Well, Richo's above that. That's where they should have a good general manager of football who comes in and handles it. Now, Richo's doing the job. Richo should be on top of the job, but he hasn't employed somebody to come and do the job. So they just need to... they just got to get smarter. Yeah, and it's not just... Look, it's not just a Tiger bash up, okay? I know it upsets all the Tigers fans, but that's a conversation that needs to be had there. It's a conversation that other clubs don't have either. So it's not just the Tigers who are falling short.
No, definitely not. I mean, it kind of makes sense. People have talked about this. Da Silva goes to Newcastle. You know, they're losing their hooker to Canberra. He goes there for a year, and then maybe
they can do
Api
that.
Goes over to Perth, you know?
Well, who knows?
Yeah.
And with those two new franchises coming in 27, 28, there's going to be a lot more opportunities, going to be a lot more money there. So
it'd be a great signing for Perth. Panthers were running last in round 12.
Yeah.
They're now 8th in round 16.
I said that last week, didn't I? A month ago they were running last, and now they're in the 8th. So, look, I think they're doing it on the back that they finally found their defence.
Yep.
And that's what's happened there. So they're going terrific. And, the big question now is, can they challenge? Are they able to win the Premiership?
Do you think they can?
History says you can't outside the top 4. You need, for whatever reason, it's either the home final or the second chance. I don't know which one is more valuable, but certainly since the NRL's been going since 1998, no one has won from outside the 4.
Yeah.
That said, nobody's ever come into the finals, finished between 5 and 8, having won the 4 previous premierships. So if there's a team that's going to do it, and when you bring Cleary and Liam Martin and Isaiah Yeo and Kenny and Edwards and all those guys back into the side, I'll tell you what, after what they did against the third place side on the weekend, you'd be brave not to back them in.
So there's only at the moment there's 4 points difference between 5th and 16th.
Yeah,
and then
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you think of the table? I mean, is that indication that the salary cap's working?
It's too easy to say.
Okay.
I've never seen a competition like this late in the season, and we're only halfway through. But we're halfway through the season, and you've got 6 points separating all those teams, 5th down to 16th.
The top 4 now have broken away.
But that's the issue. The top 4 have broken away. I think Melbourne are in 4th spot on 24, and they're 6 points clear of 5th spot.
Okay.
So they've broken away. So you would argue, yes, the top 4 are the teams that you'd be looking at to win the premiership. That said, I think it's really interesting. I think it's really strong for the competition. That the teams are so level that, like I said, 6 points separating 5th and 16th. Most teams every week now are going in with a chance. Even the Titans, who are running last, they've had some good wins this year. They've only had 4, but they only need. They've only had 4 wins. They're only 6 points 4 points out of the 8.
So, let's talk about one of those teams, because the Knights have been poor up until 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And now they seem to have turned it around.
Yeah.
With a win over the Dolphins, who were flying this week.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know whether the trip to Perth might have just galvanised the Knights a little bit. They get their tails up. They feel like it's a little bit special trip. It's a
bit of a bonding kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's an exhibition type game from a point of view that you're going to a new state to sell a product. Okay, and whether the Dolphins probably got a little bit too high on their recent weeks. Sometimes when you're scoring that many points, you run the risk of not concentrating so much on your defence. And if they started, they didn't start well the other day. And I just think Bradman Best coming back helped out Kalen Ponga. He needed a big game after being disappointing in Origin 1. He certainly put a lot more effort into his game.
How does him coming back? How does Best coming back? How does that affect Ponga's game?
Well, it gives him, when Ponga plays down that left side, which is his preferred side, it gives him an option to create uncertainty in the defence.
Right.
Because they've not only got Kalen Ponga coming at him, they've got Bradman Best coming at him as well.
Origin
and both are very, very difficult to deal with.
Yep.
So what happens is the defence will, okay, which one have I got? What's Ponga going to do? He's got the ball. He's sort of dictating the situation. Best is running out a hole. He's a brilliant hole runner. And it just causes that little bit of uncertainty in the defence. And the later the Kalen can play the ball, the later the defence has got to react to whatever Kalen's done. And because they are both so good, Best and Ponga are both so good in that traffic, if you're not 100% where you need to be, if you've overread the situation or you haven't quite read it right and you're not quite where you need to be, your feet aren't where they need to be defensively, you could get easily beaten. And it's amazing how one player can complement Kalen that much. But it just gives him enough hesitation in the defence, I think, just to find somewhere to actually get out and create opportunities.
Yeah, he's definitely needed that. One player who I've enjoyed watching this year at the Knights is Fletcher Sharp, but he's now out with a ruptured spleen.
Yeah, awful injury. Yeah, fell on the ball. So when you saw him when he went down, it looked like, I thought he was winded at first. But obviously it was much more serious than that. And that's just a nasty injury. Like they can turn quite serious. He's still over there in Perth in hospital, apparently. So, look, to be fair, he either stays there for a while, I'd say, or there's a chance he might be sitting on a 4-day train ride.
On the nullable.
On the nullable.
Oh, jeez.
But, it's just one of those difficult ones. So, look, wish him all the best, don't we?
Another big injury out of that was Jack Bostock, who's been phenomenal.
Yeah, the cruelty of rugby league.
Yeah, he scored 4 tries the previous week and is now out with ACL.
ACL, yeah. Look, that happens. Look, it's not the first time that's happened, but that just shows you how enjoy the highs, because the lows might not be far away.
Yeah. Kenty, talk to me about the Broncos Sharks, because coming into that game, no one really knew what was going to happen.
No, well, we spoke about it. We said we didn't know what. It was a bit of a dog's breakfast of a game too. I thought Cronulla looked really good the first half. And then Katoa did that stupid professional foul right at the end of the first half.
It was unbelievable in first grade.
1 second left in the half. What he thought he was going to get out, what advantage he thought he was going to get out of that, I've got no idea.
Yeah.
But he did that, and at first I thought, okay, they're going to have 10 minutes now to defend in the second half, first 10 minutes of the second half. And I thought, but they'll be coming off a half-time break, so they will be rested. They've got their legs back. So I thought it might not damage them too much. But Cronulla just came out a different team. I didn't put that win down on the weekend so much as Brisbane fighting their way back into the game, as much as I thought Cronulla threw it away. They did it with just poor execution on so many plays.
So what's happening at Cronulla? Because they seem to have the roster. They've got the coach who was going to be the next big thing.
I don't want to turn into a Nicho Hines bash, but he's concerning. Okay, Nicho just. I've said it before. If I was coaching Nicho, I'd say get rid of the pink hot pants under your shorts. Give yourself a haircut. Be the most basic footballer, and get rid of all their outside distractions. I just wish he'd just get back to his footy. When he was down in Melbourne, he was just about the footy, and I think all his dip in form or dips in form lately have always been when there's just other stuff around. And I think his confidence is rattled now.
Well, the thing is,
he's
in Melbourne,
playing too early. Look, the problem with Nicho is he's playing too early before the line, and he's going sideways. And as a chief playmaker, he's not squaring up the attack. He's going sideways, and all the defence just shifts whichever way he's going. And so that he doesn't cause any problems. But what was worse on the weekend was there was balls rolled in goal that ran dead. So there's 7 tackle sets to Brisbane, and all those little things to just slow down your opposition's momentum or to just keep them on the back foot. All those little things just went right out of the Cronulla game. And as I said, I think Cronulla threw the game away. I'm concerned about Cronulla. I keep waiting for them to find their rhythm, and they're just not getting there. And What does Craig Fitzgibbon do? I don't know.
Well, it's interesting. In Melbourne, he wasn't the top dog, Nicho Hynes. He played behind.
Well, he played
Grant,
fullback mostly
Munster.
too, occasionally in the halves.
Yeah. So is that
He's never the chief playmaker?
No, ever. And maybe he's just not the alpha dog. Maybe he isn't the leader that they need. So what does Fitzy do? Does he potentially move Nicho back to fullback? Will Kennedy's been the custodian for a long time and has been in good form up until recently, where people are now questioning his form.
Yeah, but I think he's probably out of form because the Sharks aren't in form.
Okay.
And you could, where does it start? Problem the Sharks have got is they just seem to be running better now when Braden Trindle runs the team. He's on about 2/3 of what Nicho's on, if not less. And then you got Will Kennedy at the back, who, when the Dally M votes went behind closed doors, was leading the Dally M. So he'd had a strong start to the season. Now, they're the two positions that Nicho probably plays best. The halfback position, which they've entrusted him to do, and let's remember, he did win the Dally M at halfback.
Not so many years ago, 2 years ago. Yeah.
So he did win the Dally M. So it's not like he's hopeless in that position.
No.
But I think it's as simple as he's ball playing. He runs too long with the ball. He runs sideways with the ball, and he just doesn't create any stress in the defence. And so the defence is just picking it all up. And once the Sharks got their heads in front the other day, I thought that they would kick on and go with it. They led by 16 points and couldn't close out the game. That second half is just a lesson in how to just blow away a lead.
So they've now lost, I think it's 3 out of 4 during the Origin period,
and haven't lost a play at Origin.
No, which is when you were saying this is their opportunity.
This is their opportunity, and I think they've blown it. I really don't think the Sharks can make top 4 now. I think they've blown it. Yeah, I think it's all over for them as far as top 4 go. Look, they could turn it around. It's such is the evenness of the competition. You only need to find a little burst of 6 weeks, win 6 in a row, and you just rocket right through the ladder because so many teams are going loss win. But I tell you what, there's nothing there to indicate at the moment that they're going to turn it around.
So I know the Tigers lost, but some interesting signs in that game out of the Raiders. Came back from 16-0.
Yeah, they played well at Tigers.
Yep.
I think they got sort of blasted a little bit early in the game, which is what the Raiders are doing to teams this season. It was a little bit of Canberra started high emotionally. The whole lead up they'd had, Jed Stewart on the win, the coach's son making his first grade debut. The Tigers haven't been playing well out of Campbelltown, but that said, Canberra don't generally play well at Campbelltown either. Canberra got away to that lead, and then I don't know whether they just put the cue in the rack a little bit. I don't think it was quite that. I think the Tigers just sort of found their feet, so to speak, got into their rhythm, and just went back to the hard grind, and just slowly started to wear away at the Raiders. I thought that there's a lot of good signs out of the Tigers. They just couldn't get the points there. They just started a little bit higher energy, I think, defensively, and just. Well, Wayne needed to stop one of those tries, didn't they? But if they'd done that, then they would have been every chance to win. And 16-12 was a pretty good effort from the Tigers. They're battling away. They're going okay, the Tigers.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're much better than they've been in recent seasons. So there's a lot of promising signs there. And they're probably still learning how to win, to be fair. Like, you've got Luai and you've got Coruscant there who obviously have tremendous success at other clubs. But you've also got guys there who are still learning how to win, still make the odd mistakes that you don't see other top 4 sides. But that's what it's all about.
Work in progress. Education. A team that's going the other way is North Queensland, who got hammered yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, I don't know. Look, what's the concerning thing for the Cowboys, I really like Todd Payton. But I think if I'm Todd Payten and I'm coaching the Cowboys, I've got to give them some sort of circuit breaker.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever they did last week or last month or whatever they've been doing, I would try and find something completely different. Take them right out of that bubble that they're in at the moment, training-wise.
Or go away on a camp or something.
Well, yeah, go away, take them away. You've got to be a little bit careful of that because
it's hard
they
spend
so much,
right?
But they spend so much time on the road and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But my concern for the Cowboys is they're getting comfortable losing.
Interesting.
And they don't look like I don't want to say they don't look like they're trying, but there's an ease. Yeah, when Todd Payten first got to the Cowboys and they came out and they just burst out of the blocks that first season, and everyone went, "Wow, what's happened here?" And he spoke about it, how he started that, making them. They were training in the sand pits. They were running up the hills. They were doing all this stuff that made them really uncomfortable. And one thing about elite sport, rugby league, every elite sport around the world, individual, team sport, whatever, the champion teams, the champion athletes have all found a way to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds a bit of a cliche.
Yeah.
But you can't fall into your comfort zone and sit there and just go, this is what we did last week, this is what we're going to do next week, and let's hope it all changes. The Cowboys are they're too relaxed getting beat the way they are. There's no difference between last week and this week. So you think after getting flogged one week, you come out and you'd be up on your energy saying, we're not going to let what happened last week happen again. But you're not seeing that. They're just going out. They're just going through their players. They're just doing what's on the team sheet, whatever it is. They're not trying to change anything to change their luck, to change the way they're getting into games.
No, and you compare that to the Roosters, right? The Roosters are now, from where they've come during the season, are they a smoky?
I think they're in there. Yeah, look, again, they've got to come from outside the four. I don't know if they'll make the four. The top four teams are the only four consistent teams in the competition. So, and the Roosters are finding consistency. It's just whether they've given too much start. I think they're on, what are they, on 18 points. They've got to get to 24 to get in to catch the top four teams. So they're 3 wins behind them. The thing about that, yes, the Roosters are playing terrific. They're responding to Trent Robinson's coaching. And you can see that in the way they're playing. There's an energy about the team. There's an enthusiasm for each other. And again, the Cowboys aren't showing that. The Cowboys are, we lost again. Yeah, and there's no impetus there to try and change anything.
I want to tell you a quick little story about Robbo. I hope he doesn't mind me telling this. I bumped into him last night, and he said that he's going away now. They've got the bye. He's going away for a week by himself with just some random people who he's going on a tour. Never met these people before. Yeah. Just going away without a phone for 5 days in the middle of Australia.
Yeah. No, he does that.
Pretty amazing.
He's got some he's one of those guys who he's really has a zest for zest for life, but he has that
to learn, continue to learn.
And he wants new experiences.
Yeah, fantastic.
And he wants to do things that take him out of his comfort zone.
Yeah,
he wants to do all that, which is that's what continues the growth in him. That's what he tries to. He'll come back from that trip
with something,
and he'll have 5 or 6 lessons.
Yep.
That he can then tell his players. And find different ways to reach them, to motivate them, and to get a response out of them. Yeah, I think he's already done a terrific job so far.
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier in the show, about how some coaches get the young guys, get them on their back, and and they believe, and whereas other coaches try and go for the older set.
Yeah, and
he's clearly doing that at the Roosters, right? He's got a young team who are now playing very well and backing themselves without many senior players whatsoever.
Yeah, well, we had Victor Radley on Primetime last week, and he spoke about that, and he spoke about of all the years he's been there, how this team feels like it's the young kids team. And generally when young players come into established NRL teams, there's just this little bit of, I would say, like slight awkwardness where they're kind of overly polite and they're overly sort of quiet, and they'll sit back and they'll just wait till they're asked to do something. And the old guys run the team and they invite the young guys in and bring them along with them. The Roosters have got it the other way around. Victor was saying how the Roosters have got this team at the moment where all the young kids are coming in and they're basically taking ownership of the team. All their playmakers are kids, really.
Yeah, I saw Hugo Savala there last night too. And, mate, he had a presence about him for a young fella, which was very impressive.
How well's he playing?
Yeah, I hope they don't stuff that up with DC. Just a quick note on that is Sua Wong out for 4 to 6 weeks with the MCL strain, which was missed by the on-field referees, and also by upstairs, had to then get reviewed by a match committee as a grade 3. Yeah,
it's disappointing that they missed that. That said, though, that's what the match review committee's there for. They're there to find those ones the referee does miss, and they've responded.
Couple more things. Turbo training at right centre apparently today with Ruben Garrick on the wing, which means Lehigh Hopewadi back at 1.
Yeah. I think
you
it's
like
just, that? Well, yeah, I do, because, look, all we want to do is see Tom Trbojevic on the field. And particularly, he's coming back from injury. He's not match fit as such. And we've all spoken about the workload of him playing fullback is that what many believe is the reason he keeps coming down with these hamstring injuries and whatnot. So I do think it's a sign for Manly to try and say, you know what, we're acknowledging the problem. We're going to try and get around the problem. That said, I think there's a few other problems at the club.
Yep. I just want to finish off on something we loved on the weekend. I'll start off. I thought Alex Johnson scoring 4 tries versus the Storm is now only 7 tries away from the record.
Yeah,
fantastic footballer, mate, great effort.
Mate, he'll get it this year, Alex Johnson, and
so.
Good on him. Magnificent effort. I thought it was one of those records that would stand forever, Ken Irvine. So just different era of football. We all know that. I'm not going to get in the argument over then versus now and all that rubbish. That it's not rubbish. We all like it, but I tell you what, it's an argument you can't win, whichever way you go. But and Alex Johnson's such a humble kid. He's such a club stalwart. He didn't want to leave South. South are desperate for him to break the record there, and I just think it's a deserving. He deserves it. His attitude towards the game since he's been there right from the beginning, he's earned the right to be able to walk away with something like that he can just hang on to.
You know, I know it's not for all clubs, but I love how some clubs hold on to their players at the end and they give them that last season. And it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
But, one club player should be treated differently, and hats off to South for that. Kenty, give me the thing that you loved on the weekend.
I like Cameron Munster trying to run onto the field with the South Sydney bunny.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, very good.
What was he thinking, poor old Cam? Yeah, he likes to run out last, and unfortunately just ran out too slow, and he got overtaken by the bunny. It was nearly like a symbol for the game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Melbourne got out there first and got overrun by the bunny, but and after the week he had a magnificent Origin game. And the other thing I really liked, I didn't say this last week, I really like when Cameron Munster made captain of Queensland, and when he ran out in the field and he shaved his moustache off.
Okay, I didn't pick that up.
He shaved it off, and I remember looking at it thinking, it's like, there's an old story I'll tell you really quickly when George Foreman was fighting for the heavyweight title against Michael Moorer, and Teddy Atlas was Michael Moorer's trainer. And he sat there and he said, when George Foreman walked out, he said he took off his robe and he said he's wearing the same boxing silks that he wore the night Muhammad Ali knocked him out in Zaire. He looked at it, he thought, we're in trouble here tonight.
Yeah, wow.
And I thought when Munster was a bit the same. He's the class clown, he's the scallywag. Yeah. He's got the cool look and all the rest of it. And when he came out with the mustache shaved off, I thought, he means business, this boy.
Very good. Until tomorrow, thanks very much.